everyone, and welcome back to my bold and beautiful gossip channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because it's officially over, and for the Brown family, the fallout isn't just emotional anymore. It's financial, and it's undeniable. New explosive details suggest that the once celebrated polygamous family is now financially fractured, reportedly buried under an estimated $1.2 million in debt, a burden many believe has been quietly growing for years. While Kody Brown repeatedly insisted everything was fine, the math behind the scenes was never adding up. The lifestyle that once looked stable on TLC cameras has finally collapsed under the weight of poor decisions. Reckless real estate moves, fractured marriages, and a stubborn refusal to face reality. Insiders claim the family's financial house of cards began to sway the moment they left Las Vegas and dove headfirst into the Flagstaff dream. A move that never delivered the payoff they expected. Massive mortgages, payments on undeveloped land, rising property taxes, and mounting legal expenses slowly squeezed their cash flow, all while income streams continued to dry up. And now, with the wives gone and the illusion of unity shattered, the truth is harder to hide than ever. Christine didn't just walk away from a marriage. She exposed deep cracks that were later echoed by Janelle's jaw, dropping admission that she left the union with nothing. What once may have sounded like bitterness now feels more like a warning sign that the family's finances were never as evenly shared or as stable as viewers were led to believe. Reports suggest that Kody and Robyn's combined living expenses alone may exceed what the family brings in annually. Their sprawling Flagstaff home reportedly carries a massive mortgage, while Coyote Pass remains undeveloped, producing zero income but constant bills. What was once pitched as a legacy property has instead become a financial sinkhole, draining resources that could have supported multiple households. As TLC checks shrink and public goodwill fades, the family's reliance on reality television income looks increasingly risky. The show no longer centers on the plural marriage that made it famous, raising serious questions about how long the network will continue footing the bill for a family that no longer functions as one. Kody's repeated claims that the women were disloyal now read less like truth and more like deflection from a deeper reality, that the system was mismanaged, unevenly controlled, and ultimately unsustainable. Insiders allege Robyn continued benefiting from financial protection, while others were left scrambling. A narrative many believe is supported by Janelle's ongoing struggle to secure stable housing, even as Kody and Robyn remain comfortably settled in their expensive home. Mary's decision to pull back financially, focusing on independent income streams and distancing herself from shared finances, is now being viewed not as emotional withdrawal, but as a calculated survival move because the numbers don't lie. Analysts point to crushing costs tied to multiple mortgages, land loans, vehicle payments, credit obligations, and everyday living expenses spread across several households, all without the plural income structure that once helped absorb those burdens. That leaves Kody effectively carrying debts built for a family that no longer exists. Meanwhile, Robyn's long criticized spending habits have resurfaced in public discussion, with viewers pointing to her preference for larger homes, perceived reliance on shared finances, and resistance to downsizing as evidence that fiscal reality was ignored until it was too late. And now, as Janelle openly embraces a simpler, more independent life, and Christine thrives post-split, the contrast couldn't be more striking. Because while the former wives are rebuilding their lives with clarity and autonomy, Kody appears stuck in a financial past he refuses to acknowledge. He continues clinging to systems that quietly drain resources, while publicly framing the family's collapse as an emotional failure, something increasingly seen as a financial crisis first and a relationship breakdown second. That estimated $1.2 million debt figure, though not officially itemized line by line, sent shockwaves through the audience because it finally put scale to what viewers had long suspected. The Browns were living far beyond their means, betting everything on continued fame and family unity, only to be left exposed when both unraveled at the same time. As fans dissect every comment, real estate record, and on-screen contradiction, a harsh but consistent narrative has emerged. The Brown family didn't fall apart in pieces emotionally. They collapsed financially, driven by decisions that prioritized image over sustainability. And now, Without plural marriage to justify shared sacrifice, and without a clear strategy to offload their most expensive assets, the family's financial future looks more uncertain than ever. This has left many wondering whether bankruptcy filings, forced property sales, or legal restructuring could be looming. Because while Cody continues to argue that respect and loyalty were the real issues, the numbers tell a much colder story, one of unchecked debt, fractured accountability, and a lifestyle that simply couldn't survive once the vision of togetherness disappeared. What we're witnessing now isn't just the end of a marriage experiment. It's a cautionary tale about fame, finances, and the steep price of refusing to adapt when reality finally shows up. As the dust settles on what was once marketed as America's most famous plural family, the situation facing the Browns looks less like a temporary setback and more like a full-scale financial reckoning. Strip away the TLC edits, the inspirational confessionals, and Cody Brown's repeated assurances that everything would work out, and what remains is a tangled web of debt, liabilities, and financial commitments that no longer have the family structure or the income streams required to sustain them. Insiders now suggest that the $1.2 million debt estimate may actually be conservative once everything is accounted for. Long-term land loans tied to Coyote Pass, refinancing costs on the Flagstaff mansion, accumulated credit obligations, stalled development expenses, and years of living costs spread across multiple homes, many of which were never fully transparent with one another, all contribute to the total. This helps explain why so many of the former wives later admitted feeling financially blindsided. The plural marriage model depended heavily on trust, shared sacrifice, and long-term planning, three elements that reportedly eroded long before the relationships officially ended. That breakdown left Cody scrambling to maintain financial obligations, built for 4 marriages, using the income and cooperation of just one. Meanwhile, Robin's household remained largely insulated from the instability that plagued the others, a reality that continues to fuel outrage among viewers who believe finances were still pooled while responsibility was unevenly distributed. When Janelle admitted she had little to show after decades of contribution, it wasn't just a personal heartbreak. It was a financial indictment of how money was managed behind closed doors. It suggested that while funds flowed freely into shared assets like land and large homes, there was no safety net for the women who helped build the family's brand. That revelation makes the current crisis feel less shocking and more inevitable. Christine's departure didn't just end a marriage. It removed a crucial source of income and public engagement from the family's ecosystem. Mary's gradual withdrawal from shared finances signaled a quiet acknowledgement that the collaborative model was already falling apart. And now, the consequences of that collapse are impossible to ignore. All of this has left Cody increasingly dependent on TLC income that may no longer be reliable, especially as viewer fatigue sets in, and the core premise of plural marriage has disappeared. What once looked like valuable assets now feel more like liabilities. And nowhere is that more obvious than with Coyote Pass, a property critics now describe as the family's single biggest financial mistake. The land absorbed money year after year without producing a single home, let alone the generational legacy Cody once promised. Property taxes continued to rise. Development costs piled up, and yet nothing ever moved forward. Coyote Pass became a symbol of the family's deeper issue. Grand visions with no practical execution, worsened by Cody's refusal to compromise or sell, when market conditions may have allowed a clean exit. Instead, he clung to the dream even as the family around him fell apart. The result is that Cody and Robin are now effectively tied to debts built for a future that no longer exists, while the other women move toward independence, stability, and far more manageable lifestyles. The contrast is striking. Christine's post-split stability and Janelle's simplified way of living stand in sharp opposition to Cody's ongoing struggle to sustain expenses that no longer make sense. What was once framed as emotional fallout has now fully evolved into a financial crisis. Without unity, there is no justification for shared debt. And without shared debt, there's no logical reason to hold on to assets that bleed money month after month. Yet insiders claim Robin remains resistant to downsizing, fueling speculation that denial, not strategy, is driving the family's next moves. While Cody continues to frame the collapse as a matter of respect and obedience, financial analysts watching from the outside argue that the real breakdown happened on spreadsheets long before it played out on screen. Unsustainable spending collided with unstable income, all built on a reality television-dependent model that offered no long-term security once the show's narrative shifted. What once appeared to be wealth was, in reality, a fragile balancing act propped up by appearances alone. Now, as talk of forced property sales, refinancing desperation, and potential legal restructuring grows louder, the idea that the Brown family is financially insolvent no longer feels sensational. It feels inevitable. When debt outweighs flexibility, and assets can't be liquidated without major losses, collapse becomes less of a failure and more of a formality. That risk only increases if TLC income declines or disappears entirely, leaving Cody and Robin holding financial obligations designed for a plural family that no longer exists. Meanwhile, the former wives continue moving forward with clarity and control, creating an almost poetic contrast between those who chose independence early and those still clinging to a system already in freefall. As fans continue dissecting interviews, property records, and on-screen contradictions, one conclusion becomes increasingly clear. The Browns didn't just lose their marriages, they lost control of their financial story. And in doing so, they've created a cautionary tale about fame, unchecked ambition, and the steep price of refusing to adapt, because in the end, that $1.2 million debt isn't just a number. It's the final reckoning for years of denial, imbalance, and broken trust, marking the definitive end of the Brown family as a functioning financial unit. What remains now isn't the question of if the collapse will be acknowledged, but how long it will take before the paperwork finally catches up to the truth everyone can already see. What's most striking now is the realization that this collapse had been unfolding in plain sight for years, while viewers were distracted by emotional confrontations, loyalty debates, and Cody Brown's increasingly erratic leadership. Long before the marriages officially unraveled, the financial groundwork beneath them was already crumbling, built on an outdated plural model that depended on constant cooperation, shared sacrifice, and never-ending television income. None of that held once resentment took root and reality television. Fame stopped being a guaranteed paycheck. When the family left Las Vegas, arguably their most financially stable chapter, they traded manageable mortgages and relative affordability for Flagstaff's soaring housing costs, higher taxes, undeveloped land payments, and a lifestyle that required significantly more income just to maintain. That move only made sense if the family stayed intact and the show continued indefinitely. Neither happened, and the result left Cody servicing debts tied to a dream that dissolved far faster than anyone expected. Robin's household, often perceived by viewers as the most financially protected, quickly became the focal point of frustration as the other wives worked to secure housing, independence, and basic financial clarity. That imbalance is now being viewed through a much harsher lens, as fans connect statements from Janelle, Christine, and Mary that suggest the family's finances were never as transparent or as evenly distributed as portrayed on camera. Janelle's admission that she walked away with almost nothing sent shockwaves through the audience, forcing viewers to confront an uncomfortable possibility. Decades of shared labor and income may have been absorbed into assets she no longer had access to. Cody's insistence that loyalty equaled love now sounds eerily similar to a demand for financial compliance, a mindset critics argue kept the family locked into bad investments long after warning signs appeared. Nowhere is that clearer than with Coyote Pass. What was once framed as a hopeful symbol of unity has become the clearest example of sunk cost thinking. A property that drained money year after year without delivering progress, value, or relief. As development stalled and relationships fractured, the land shifted from legacy to liability, dragging down any chance of financial recovery. Selling it wouldn't recoup the emotional or financial investment already poured into it, leaving Cody and Robin tethered to a property that represents everything that went wrong: overconfidence, poor timing, and an unwillingness to pivot when circumstances changed. Meanwhile, the former wives did what Cody didn't. They adapted. They downsized, cut expenses, diversified income, and reclaimed control over their futures. That contrast has only made the remaining household's financial strain more visible. While Christine built stability and Janelle embraced simplicity, Cody doubled down on a lifestyle that demands constant cash flow. As TLC's focus shifted from plural success to plural failure, the family's earning power became increasingly uncertain. Every mortgage payment and tax bill turned into a high-stakes gamble dependent on continued viewer interest that naturally waned as the show's original premise faded. So when fans speculate about bankruptcy, it's not out of spite, it's logic. Bankruptcy isn't about being broke, it's about being overextended. And the Browns' situation fits that definition uncomfortably well, with debts outweighing flexibility and assets that can't be liquidated without massive losses. The risk only grows if legal fees, contract disputes, or unexpected expenses enter the picture, realities many television personalities underestimate, until it's too late. Now, as whispers of refinancing desperation, credit strain, and forced asset sales grow louder, the image of the Browns as financially savvy survivors has completely collapsed. What's left is a sobering portrait of a family that mistook fame for permanence and belief for strategy and paid the price when both failed. And while Cody continues to frame the family's collapse as a betrayal of values, financial experts watching from the outside point out a much harsher reality. Values don't pay mortgages, and vision doesn't cover property taxes, especially when the income model propping it all up depends on a television show with an uncertain future. That's what makes the $1.2 million debt figure feel less like a shocking revelation and more like the inevitable result of years of denial. Every warning sign was there. The move to Flagstaff without a concrete plan, the refusal to sell when the market was strong, the uneven flow of money, the resistance to downsizing, and the dangerous assumption that TLC would always be there to soften the fall. That assumption now looks painfully naive as the family's emotional fractures mirror its financial ones. Cody and Robin remain insulated, not just emotionally, but economically, holding debt that no longer serves a shared future. Meanwhile, the women who left carry scars, yes, but also something far more valuable: freedom. As viewers revisit old moments with fresh perspective, scenes once dismissed as drama now read like financial warning flares. Arguments over housing, fairness, and contribution hinted at deeper struggles over money and control. Issues that were never resolved, only covered up until the structure supporting them finally gave way. With the Browns no longer presenting a united front, the idea of them functioning as a single financial unit borders on absurd. Without trust, there can be no shared resources, and without shared resources, there's no justification for shared debt. What was once presented as a collaborative experiment has become a cautionary tale about tying personal finances to a fragile brand built on belief rather than planning. Whether the next chapter brings bankruptcy filings, forced asset sales, or a quiet retreat from the life they once fiercely defended, one truth is undeniable: the Brown family's financial collapse didn't happen overnight. It unfolded slowly, predictably, and in plain sight. That $1.2 million debt isn't just a number. It's the final proof that the system they built couldn't survive the moment belief gave way to reality. It marks the definitive end of the Browns, not just as a plural family, but as a functioning financial entity. And it leaves viewers with one lingering, uncomfortable question no confessional can answer: how much of this could have been avoided if anyone, had been willing to face the truth before it was too late?